15 doctors at the hospital couldn't save the billionaire. Then the 14-year-old black son of the cleaning lady, who is a medical genius, realizes what no one else could see. "Another dose of morphine now!" shouted Dr. Peterson as the monitors in the private room sounded deafening alarms. Tech billionaire William Cross was dying, and the country's best specialists were completely at a loss. Outside the luxurious room, Kevin cleaned the hallway with mechanical movements, but his eyes never left the monitor screens visible through the half-open door. At 14, he already knew that hospital better than his own home. After all, he had been accompanying his mother, Diane, on the night shift for 3 years, ever since she got the job as a cleaning lady to support the family on her own. "Kevin, stop staring at the doctors and come help me here," Diane whispered, pulling her son by the arm. "You know we can't draw attention to ourselves." But Kevin couldn't look away. During the 2 weeks Cross had been hospitalized, he had observed every symptom, every test, every medication administered, and something was completely wrong. The signs didn't match the diagnosis the doctors insisted on defending. Dr. Peterson left the room, his face red with frustration, followed by 4 other renowned specialists. "Impossible," he muttered to Dr. Williams. 15 of the best doctors in the country, and we can't even stabilize him. The symptoms don't make sense. Maybe it's some rare syndrome," suggested Dr. Williams, adjusting his immaculate lab coat, "something that only European doctors have seen." Kevin clenched his fists. They were looking for zebras when they had horses right in front of him. During his 3 years wandering the halls, he had devoured every medical book abandoned in the hospital library, memorized every procedure manual he found in the trash, and watched hundreds of surgeries through the windows of the operating rooms. His mother always said he was different. From an early age, Kevin memorized medical encyclopedias like other children memorized video games. But different here meant invisible. The son of a black cleaning lady had no voice in medical discussions. "Mom," Kevin whispered, "I know what Cross has. The doctors are treating him completely wrong." Diane stopped cleaning and looked at her son with a mixture of pride and concern. "Kevin, dear, you're brilliant, but this is no place for compromised fifth cranial nerves, progressive loss of motor coordination." "But neurological exams come back normal," Kevin continued, ignoring the interruption. "They're looking for neurological disease when they should be investigating poisoning." Diane's eyes widened. She knew her son well enough to know when he was just speculating and when he had discovered something real. And right now, the certainty in Kevin's voice frightened her. As the doctors gathered for an emergency conference at the end of the hall, Kevin watched a nurse administer another dose of the drug he suspected was slowly killing Cross. His heart raced. If you're enjoying this story about a boy who sees beyond prejudice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because what Kevin was about to discover would not only transform the life of the dying billionaire, but reveal a truth so shocking that it would make 15 renowned doctors question everything they thought they knew about medicine and about underestimating the genius that can flourish in the most unexpected places. The emergency medical conference was held behind closed doors, but Kevin knew every inch of that hospital. Through the ventilation system he cleaned weekly, he was able to hear every word of the discussion that would decide Cross's fate. "We're wasting time," declared Dr. Peterson, banging his fists on the table. "We've tried antivirals, state-of-the-art antibiotics, even experimental therapy. Nothing works." Dr. Williams desperately leafed through the medical records. "The tests remain inconclusive. Maybe we should transfer the patient to Johns Hopkins." "Impossible!" exploded Dr. Peterson. 15 of the best specialists in the country are in this hospital. If we can't solve it, no one can. Kevin shook his head in frustration. Pure arrogance. They were killing Cross out of ego, refusing to admit that maybe they had been looking in the wrong direction from the start. As the doctors discussed increasingly far-fetched theories, Kevin returned to Cross's room. The billionaire was visibly worse. Shaking hands, dilated pupils, irregular breathing, all the signs Kevin had memorized 3 years ago when a similar patient had been admitted to the general ward. At that time, Kevin was only 11 years old and was just starting to accompany her to the hospital. A middle-aged man had arrived with symptoms identical to Cross's. The doctors were also unable to diagnose him. Kevin, curious as ever, had spent entire nights reading about the case on the computers in the medical library. A man died. But at the autopsy, they discovered mercury poisoning. Kevin never forgot the details: how the tremors began steadily, how the mental confusion developed gradually, how conventional neurological tests failed to detect the true cause. "Kevin, stop standing there," Diane muttered, passing by with the cleaning cart. "The doctors are nervous enough already." But Kevin couldn't tear himself away. He watched as a nurse administered another dose of iron chelator, the same medication that had been given to the man 3 years ago, completely useless for mercury poisoning. "Mom," Kevin whispered, pulling Diane into a corner, "they're giving Cross iron chelator, but if it's mercury poisoning, they need to use penicillamine or Durcapol." Diane looked at her son with a mixture of pride and concern she always felt when Kevin demonstrated his frightening medical knowledge. "Honey, are you sure about that?" "100%, Kevin replied, his eyes shining with an intensity that always frightened the adults around him. "The symptoms are identical to the case from 2020. Patient Timothy Walsh, room 312, progressive tremors, mental confusion, but normal brain MRI. Organic mercury, probably methyl mercury." His mother stopped cleaning altogether. Kevin had not only memorized the symptoms, he remembered the patient's name, exact room number, and year. At 14, his son had a mental archive more accurate than the hospital's computers. "How do you know all this?" Diane asked, even though she already knew the answer. Kevin smiled sadly. "Because I read everything, Mom. Every lost medical record, every discarded medical book, every scientific journal forgotten in the waiting room. I've learned that if he's invisible, he can absorb knowledge without anyone noticing." At that moment, Dr. Peterson left the conference room looking completely frustrated. Kevin approached him respectfully, gathering all the courage he had. "Dr. Peterson," he began in a firm voice, "I know this is going to sound crazy, but you need to check Mr. Cross for mercury poisoning." The doctor stopped abruptly, as if a child had just slapped him in the face. "Excuse me." "The symptoms are classic," Kevin continued quickly before he lost his nerve. "Progressive tremors, mental confusion, but normal MRI. It's identical to the case of Mr. Walsh in 2020. "Young man," Dr. Peterson interrupted with a condescending smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I know he wants to help, but medicine is not child's play. Timothy Walsh died of complicated pneumonia." "No, sir," Kevin insisted, feeling the blood rush to his head. "He died of mercury poisoning. I read the autopsy report that was in the trash in the doctor's room." Dr. Peterson's smile vanished instantly. "You rummage through medical trash? That's a violation of hospital protocol." "I don't rummage," Kevin replied calmly. "I clean. And while I clean, I observe. And while I observe, I learn." Dr. Peterson looked around, realizing that other doctors and nurses had stopped to watch the discussion. A 14-year-old black boy, the son of the cleaning lady, was publicly questioning his diagnosis. "Security!" Dr. Peterson shouted. "I want that boy and his mother off my floor now!" Diane came running, her face red with shame and fear. "Kevin, what have you done?" "He's trying to play doctor," Dr. Peterson declared loudly enough for everyone to hear, questioning professional diagnosis based on hospital trash. Cruel laughter echoed down the hallway. Kevin felt every look of contempt like a blade, but he stood his ground. He had learned early on that showing weakness only fed predators. "Dr. Peterson," Kevin said with a calmness that surprised even his mother, "if you don't test for mercury in the next 12 hours, William Cross will die, and you'll have to explain to the family why you ignored the possibility." The doctor turned purple with rage. "Is that a threat?" "It's a medical observation," Kevin replied, looking directly into the eyes of the man who was 3 times her age and had 15 times as many degrees. "Based on evidence you chose to ignore." Security arrived, ready to escort Kevin and Diane out. But before they could be removed, a shrill alarm echoed through the hallway. Cross had gone into convulsions. As doctors rushed desperately to stabilize the dying billionaire, Kevin whispered to her, "12 hours, Mom. If they don't test for mercury in 12 hours, we're going to have to take drastic measures." Diane looked at her son, seeing in those young eyes a determination that both frightened and inspired her. Kevin wasn't just a brilliant boy. He was a young man who had learned to see through social invisibility, to absorb knowledge in the spaces society reserved for people like him. And now, for the first time in his life, Kevin was ready to use that knowledge in a way that no one could ignore. What those arrogant doctors didn't know was that underestimating an invisible genius had just become the biggest mistake of their careers, and possibly the last mistake that Cross would allow her to make with his life. For hours after Cross's seizure, the entire hospital vibrated with palpable tension. Kevin watched through the small circular window in the door as 15 doctors took turns around the billionaire's bed, all with expressions of barely concealed despair. "We're losing," Dr. Williams muttered to Dr. Peterson in the hallway. "The symptoms are worsening exponentially. If we don't find the cause in the next few hours," Dr. Peterson interrupted with a sharp gesture, "I don't want to hear defeatism. We are the best doctors in the country. Some spoiled kid from the slums isn't going to teach us medicine." Kevin felt every word like a slap in the face. But he remained focused. He had learned that anger without strategy was just a waste of energy. During the years he had spent accompanying his mother to the hospital, Kevin had developed something that doctors, with their expensive degrees, never had: the ability to become completely invisible when necessary. While the doctors discussed increasingly far-fetched theories, Kevin slipped through the corridors like a shadow. His first stop was the medical library, where over the past 3 years he had memorized virtually every toxicology book available. But now he needed something more specific. "Kevin," a soft voice called to him as he leafed through a toxicology emergency manual. It was Jennifer Chun, a third-year resident who had always been kind to him and her mother. "What are you doing here?" "I heard there was an incident with Dr. Peterson." Kevin looked around, making sure they were alone. "Dr. Chun, can I trust you?" The young doctor seemed surprised by the boy's formality and seriousness. "Of course, Kevin. What's going on?" "Cross is dying of mercury poisoning," Kevin said bluntly. "The symptoms are identical to the Walsh case from 2020. Progressive tremors, mental confusion, normal MRI. He's being given an iron chelator, but he needs to use penicillamine or dimer." "Doctor..." Chun was silent for a long moment, studying the boy's determined face. At 26, she was young enough to remember when she too was underestimated by older doctors. "Kevin, are you absolutely sure about this?" "100%, Kevin replied, opening the book to the exact page on mercury poisoning. "Look here, the symptoms match perfectly. And I have a theory about how the mercury is getting into his system." The doctor leaned in to examine the text, impressed by the accuracy of Kevin's knowledge. "How do you know all this?" "I learned by reading, observing, absorbing everything I could," Kevin explained. "When you're invisible, people talk in front of him as if he doesn't exist. I've learned more medicine in these 3 years than many residents do in years of college." Dr. Chun nodded slowly. "What do you need me to do?" I need access to Cross's complete medical records from the last 3 months, including visitors and personal items he uses regularly, Kevin said, his eyes shining with the intensity that always frightened adults. And I need she who helps me to collect evidence without Dr. Peterson knowing. As they talked, Kevin explained his theory. Someone was systematically poisoning Cross through personal products. During his observations, he had noticed that Cross used his imported toothpaste, his aftershave lotion, and his headache medicine every day. Any of these products could have been laced with organic mercury, Kevin explained. The absorption would be gradual, causing slow but lethal poisoning. Dr. Chun watched him with growing admiration. "Kevin, that's brilliant. But if you're right, we're talking attempted murder." "Exactly," Kevin confirmed, "and that's why I need solid evidence before confronting Dr. Cross." Peterson again. "The first time he humiliated her publicly. Next time I'll have proof even she can't ignore." At that moment, a nurse rushed down the hall. "Emergency in Cross's room. He's having another episode." Kevin and Dr. Chun rushed to the room where they found a scene of controlled panic. Cross was having intermittent seizures. Her skin had taken on a grayish hue, and the monitors showed dangerously unstable vital signs. 50 more milligrams of diazepam," Dr. Peterson shouted, "and increase the dosage of the iron chelator." "Dr. Peterson?" Dr. Chan approached cautiously. "Perhaps we should consider other possibilities. The symptoms are not responding to the current treatment." Dr. Chun. Dr. Peterson interrupted her with an icy stare. "I hope you haven't been influenced by that boy's fantasies. Medicine isn't democratic. Experience counts more than childish theories." Kevin watched from outside the room, his fists clenched in frustration. Every minute lost was a minute less of life for Cross. As the doctors continued with their ineffective treatment, Kevin made a decision that would change everything. During the nursing shift change, Kevin gained access to Cross's room. With precise, silent movements, he photographed all of the billionaire's personal items with his cell phone. Aftershave, toothpaste, medications, even the imported soak. But it was when he examined the tube of toothpaste that Kevin felt his heart race. The product had a slightly different color than normal, an almost imperceptible silver tone. Using a small plastic spatula found in the bathroom, Kevin collected a tiny sample and stored it in a small container he had borrowed from the lab. "What are you doing?" An authoritative voice echoed behind him. Kevin slowly turned to find Dr. Peterson at the door, accompanied by 2 hospital security guards. "Collecting evidence," Kevin replied calmly. "Evidence?" Dr. Peterson laughed dismissively. "Kid, you're delusional. Security, remove this minor from the room immediately and call her mother. I'll talk to administration about disciplinary measures." But before the security guards could move, Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway. "Dr. Peterson, maybe we should hear what Kevin has to say. After all, Cross is rapidly deteriorating with the current treatment." "Dr. Chun." Dr. Peterson turned to her with flaming eyes. "Her career at this hospital may be at stake if she continues to support this circus." Kevin stepped forward, holding the small container with the sample. "Dr. Peterson, in 12 hours, Cross will be dead if they continue with the current treatment. But if you test this sample for mercury, you'll find lethal concentrations." "That's ridiculous," Dr. Peterson declared. But Kevin noticed an almost imperceptible hesitation in her voice. "Then do the test," Kevin challenged, holding out the container. "If I'm wrong, I'll never question a medical diagnosis again. But if I'm right? If you're right, what?" Dr. Peterson asked sarcastically. Kevin looked directly into the doctor's eyes, her voice laden with a confidence that silenced everyone in the room. "If I'm right, you're going to have to explain how a 14-year-old boy saved a billionaire's life when 15 experts failed." The silence that followed was broken only by the rhythmic beeps of Cross's monitors. Dr. Peterson looked to the sample, then at Kevin, then at Dr. Chun, who was watching with growing interest. "All right, Dr. Peterson," finally said, her voice betraying equal parts irritation and curiosity. "Well, do his little test, but when it comes back negative, I want him and his mother out of this hospital permanently." Kevin smiled for the first time in hours, a smile that contained years of accumulated knowledge and a confidence that came from knowing exactly what that test would reveal. "I accept the bet, Dr. Peterson, but I suggest you prepare an explanation for the press about how the hospital almost lost the country's most famous billionaire because of medical pride." As Dr. Peterson left the room with a sample, clearly uncomfortable but committed to the test, Kevin whispered to Dr. Chun, "Now comes the interesting part, because when that test comes back positive for mercury, we're going to find out who's trying to kill Cross, and I already have my suspicions." Chun looked at him with growing admiration. "Kevin, how did you develop all this expertise?" "Dr. Chun," Kevin replied, watching through the window as Dr. Peterson argued animatedly with other doctors in the hallway. "When society makes you invisible, you learn to see things others don't. And what I've seen over the past 3 years has prepared me for this very moment." The test would take 2 hours to complete, 2 hours that Kevin knew he would use to prepare the next phase of his plan. Because proving that Cross was being poisoned was only the beginning. Finding out who was behind the poisoning and why would be the true test of her medical genius. As she watched Cross struggle with the effects of mercury, Kevin felt an iron determination crystallize in her chest. 15 renowned doctors had failed, not because of a lack of knowledge, but because of a lack of humility to listen to different perspectives. And now, in the next 2 hours, he would prove that sometimes wisdom comes from the most unexpected places, and that underestimating someone based on age, skin color, or social class can be a fatal mistake. 2 hours and 17 minutes later, Dr. Peterson returned to Cross's room with an expression Kevin would never forget. The test had come back positive for mercury, lethal levels, just as the boy had predicted. "Positive result for organic mercury poisoning," Dr. Peterson announced to the assembled medical team, her voice sounding as if she were chewing glass. "Concentration of 2.4 parts per million in toothpaste." The silence that followed was broken only by the beeps of Cross's monitors. 15 renowned specialists stared at Kevin as if they were seeing a ghost or a miracle. "Immediately begin treatment with Dirkcaprol," Kevin said calmly, addressing Dr. Peterson directly. 50 milligrams per pound of body weight intramuscularly every 4 hours. Dr. Peterson opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. The boy had just saved a billionaire's life when 15 doctors had failed. To protest would be to publicly admit her incompetence. But Kevin wasn't finished. "Dr. Peterson, have you checked who has access to Mr. Cross's personal belongings?" "That's a job for the police," Dr. Peterson replied defensively. "Actually," Kevin continued, pulling out his phone, "I've already identified the culprit." All eyes turned to the 14-year-old boy who was about to solve not only a poisoning, but an attempted murder. "For 3 weeks, I observed Cross's visitors," Kevin explained methodically. "Only 3 people had regular access to his personal belongings: head nurse Sandra Williams, his personal assistant David Foster, and her ex-wife Rebecca Cross." Kevin showed his phone to the group, but only one person visited Cross exactly 3 hours before each health crisis. He swiped to a photo of her. Rebecca Cross, and she always brought special gifts, including the imported organic toothpaste. Dr. Peterson frowned. "How do you have this information?" "Because while you were discussing impossible theories, he was documenting patterns," Kevin replied. "Rebecca Cross visited Cross on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the past 3 weeks. Every Thursday, she brought special hygiene products for her ex-husband, saying they were organic and better for her sensitive health." Dr. Chen approached impressed. "Kevin, How did you connect all this? A billionaire divorce means a fight over inheritance, Kevin explained simply. Cross is worth $4.2 billion. If he died of natural causes before changing his will, Rebecca would inherit 80% of the fortune. At that moment, as if the universe were orchestrating perfect justice, Rebecca Cross entered the room carrying an elegant bag from the pharmacy. "William, dear, I brought his favorite products," she said sweetly, unaware of the tension in the room. "The special toothpaste he loves." Mrs. Cross, Kevin politely interjected. Could she explain where she purchases these special products? Rebecca looked at her with irritation. "Excuse me, who is she?" "I'm Kevin, and I just saved his ex-husband's life by discovering that someone was systematically poisoning him with organic mercury mixed into his hygiene products." Rebecca's face instantly paled. Her hands trembled almost imperceptibly as she held the bag. "That's absurd," she stammered. "I would never." "Ma'am, you've been working as an industrial chemist for 15 years, he continued relentlessly. "You have access to organic mercury through the pharmaceutical company where you're a consultant. And, coincidentally, Cross always has seizures, exactly 6 hours after your visits." Dr. Peterson watched the scene with a mixture of horror and growing admiration. The boy wasn't just solving a medical case, he was conducting a real-time criminal investigation. "This is ridiculous." Rebecca tried to maintain her composure, but her hands continued to shake. "I love William. I would never hurt him." Kevin pulled up more photos on his phone. "Here you are yesterday buying hygiene products at the downtown pharmacy." And here he showed another photo. She is entering the Meridian Chemical Laboratory on Monday, where she works as a consultant and has access to organic mercury. "How did you?" Rebecca began, then fell silent, realizing she was incriminating herself. "Because I observe, ma'am, when you're invisible, you learn to see patterns that others overlook," Kevin replied. "And the pattern here is quite clear. Ambitious ex-wife with chemical knowledge and financial motive systematically poisoning her ex-husband to inherit billions." Dr. Peterson finally found his voice. "Security! Call the police immediately!" Rebecca dropped the bag, products scattering across the floor. Her mask of a loving wife had completely disappeared, revealing the desperation of someone who knew she had been found out. "You can't prove anything," she shouted. "It's his word against mine." Kevin smiled, the same calm smile he had used when Dr. Peterson had publicly humiliated him. "Actually, ma'am, I do have proof." He showed her his phone again. "I recorded everything. Your visits, your schedules, your purchases, including—" Kevin paused dramatically. "The recording of her mixing something into his toothpaste yesterday when she thought no one was looking." The silence in the room was deafening. Rebecca Cross, her who had coldly attempted to murder her ex-husband for money, was being exposed by a 14-year-old black boy whom society had trained to be invisible. "Impossible," she whispered. "No one was in the hallway." "I was cleaning the room next door," Kevin explained, with the door ajar, perfect angle to see and record everything. Rebecca's legs gave way. She leaned against the wall, realizing that his perfect plan had been destroyed by someone he hadn't even noticed existed. Dr. Peterson looked at Kevin with an expression that mixed admiration, shame, and utter amazement. In less than 24 hours, this boy had diagnosed a poisoning that 15 experts had missed, identified the culprit, and collected enough evidence for a conviction. "Kevin," Dr. Peterson said quietly, her voice thick with emotion, "you didn't just save Cross's life. You solved a case that could have been the perfect crime." As the police led Rebecca Cross away in handcuffs, and Cross began to show signs of improvement with the correct treatment, Kevin remained in the corner of the room watching. At 14, he had proven that genius has no color, age, or social class. In the center of that hospital room, Where arrogance disguised as medical expertise had once reigned, a new reality was now taking shape, like a symphony finally finding her harmony after years of dissonant notes, proving that true wisdom can flourish in the most unexpected places, especially when society tries most desperately to keep it invisible. 6 months later, Kevin walked through the same hospital corridors, but now wearing a white coat with his name embroidered on it. Kevin Beaumont Jr., medical consultant. At 15, he had become the youngest consultant in the hospital's history, working part-time while completing his accelerated medical studies on a full scholarship. Dr. Peterson, who had previously humiliated him publicly, now greeted him respectfully in the hallways. Arrogance had been replaced by forced humility. After all, explaining how a 14-year-old boy saved a billionaire when 15 specialists had failed was not exactly the kind of story that elevated a medical reputation. Kevin, Dr. Peterson, intercepted him one morning, clearly uncomfortable. "I wanted to thank you again for showing us what we had missed." Kevin smiled politely. "Dr. Peterson, we all make mistakes. The difference is in learning from them." The cross case had made national headlines. Boy Genius Saves Billionaire and Unravels Conspiracy graced newspaper front pages for weeks. Universities offered full scholarships. Television programs vied for interviews, and Kevin became a symbol that genius has no color, age, or social class. William Cross, fully recovered, had established a $100 million educational fund specifically for invisible young people like Kevin. Brilliant children whose potential was ignored by systems that saw only uniforms, not minds. "That boy saved me when the best doctors in the country failed," Cross said in an interview. "If there's a Kevin out there being underestimated, I want to find him." Diane now worked as the program coordinator, no longer as a cleaning lady. "My son taught me that knowledge is not lost, it just waits for the right moment to shine," she said proudly in her first television interview. Rebecca Cross was sentenced to 25 years in prison for attempted murder. During the trial, when asked how she felt about being discovered by a teenager, she replied bitterly, "I didn't even see he existed." The phrase went viral, symbolizing how society loses incredible talent due to prejudice and social invisibility. Kevin remained humble throughout the transformation. In interviews, he always emphasized that he had learned by observing, not because he was special. Anyone can develop these skills if they have access to knowledge and the opportunity to apply it. Today, Kevin is studying medicine at Harvard at the age of 15. But he regularly returns to the hospital where it all began. Not as the invisible son of the cleaning lady, but as a respected consultant who continues to save lives through keen observation and applied knowledge. Dr. Peterson, for his part, never fully recovered from the public embarrassment. Although he retained his position, he had lost the moral authority he once commanded. His colleagues constantly reminded him of the day a 14-year-old black boy taught him medicine. Kevin's story proves that true genius does not need recognition to exist. She just waits for the right opportunity to transform the world. Sometimes those whom society trains to be invisible are exactly the ones who see what everyone else has missed. The best revenge against prejudice is not anger, but success that his oppressors never imagined possible. Kevin turned invisibility into a superpower, others' ignorance into his own opportunity, and proved that underestimating someone based on appearances can be the biggest mistake he makes in life. If this story of overcoming adversity has inspired him, subscribe to the channel for more narratives that show how true justice happens when talent finds her opportunity to shine.